You ever hype up a book in your own head before reading it and then you read it and you don't like it? Me too. And it feels cursed. Hi, my name is Rachel, and today we're talking about The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Katherine Arden. This was requested by my patron, Lily B. I really, truly, deeply loved The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. That is a beautiful book. This author's other book, that she has a trilogy based on Russian folklore. It has stayed with me all these years since I first read it. That was the first book that I ever reviewed on this channel. Its emotional impact has haunted me like a ghost. So my assumption and expectation was that this book was also going to have an incredible impact on me, and then I read it and it got a 3-star. I would honestly rather read a book I assume is going to be a 3 and have it end up be a 1-star and rage about the bad writing than read a book that I assume is going to be a 5 and have it disappoint me. That burns more. That stings. That is miserable to me. I hate being disappointed. So many of my recent reads were 2 to 3, but this one stings especially because of what I had hoped for it. Let me give you the synopsis. During the Great War, a combat nurse searches for her brother, believed dead in the trenches despite eerie signs that suggest otherwise. In this hauntingly beautiful historical novel with a speculative twist from the New York Times bestselling author of The Bear and the Nightingale, January 1918, Laura Ivan was a revered field nurse until she was wounded and discharged from the medical corps, leaving behind a brother still fighting in Flanders. Now home in Halifax, Canada, she receives word of Freddie's death in combat, along with his personal effects, but something doesn't make sense. Determined to uncover the truth, Laura returns to Belgium as a volunteer at a private hospital. Soon after arriving, she hears whispers about haunted trenches and a strange hotelier, oh boy. Oh no, now you guys know once again that I don't know how words work. Whose wine gives soldiers the gift of oblivion. Could Freddie have escaped the battlefield only to fall prey to something or someone else? November 1917, so just a few months previous, Freddie Ivan awakens after an explosion to find himself trapped in an overturned pillbox with a wounded enemy soldier, a German by the name of Hans Winter. Against all odds, the two men form an alliance and succeed in clawing their way out. Unable to bear the thought of returning to the killing fields, especially on opposite sides, they take refuge with a mysterious man who seems to have the power to make the hellscape of the trenches disappear. As shells rain down on Flanders, ghosts move among those yet living, and Laura's and Freddie's deepest traumas are awakened. Now they must decide whether their world is worth salvaging or better left behind entirely. This is not a bad book. As with all of Katherine Arden's writing, like, the lines are good. I can appreciate the care here, and I really think that Katherine Arden should be very proud of what she did here, but appreciating something and liking it aren't the same. Arden does description beautifully. She's really a master at the small details, but that's not all that I've come to expect from her books. I expect to cry. I wanted to cry, especially with the subject matter we are dealing with here. I really wanted to sob, and I mean that. I like when a book has that effect on me. There's something safe in having your heart broken by fiction, and there's something that I really love, that I just really love about that, where I'm just like, this is not going to affect my real life in any way, so I can just sit with these feelings, but I can still, go about my day tomorrow. I'm not going to lay in bed and be depressed. Well, I might be a little depressed, depends on the book. I mean, I'm going to be depressed either way, just because I'm mentally ill, So especially with the subject matter here that we're dealing with, I expected to sob, but in order to sob, I have to care, and somehow the author of The Bear and the Nightingale made me wish for someone to die in her story, just so we could get to the point, any point. The way that this lags was so deeply unenjoyable that I was wishing Laura, the main character, would end up dead just so I could, get somewhere, as if somehow that would transport me to it being over with. And I know that Katherine Arden is capable of this because of The Bear and the Nightingale, but because unfortunately somehow the same author who gave us Vasia also gave us Laura, who is the most milquetoast person, who simply, she cannot carry a book like this. I think that Arden may have thought that the audience would only want Freddie to be found and care about Freddie if we cared about Laura, his sister, but that's just not true. Freddie is the only person in this book that I cared about, and so often we sacrifice more time with Freddie for time with Laura that is so stagnant, and you're just sitting there feeling like, when will this be done? And we could have had nearly the exact same story, just refocused on Freddie, and the German soldier that he was stuck with, Hans Winter. I do think that this had a good discussion on the horrors of war, PTSD, how people can do depraved things to each other. Losing pieces of yourself during war was done both in like the literal and the figurative here in a way that I think is, good, well done. And that doesn't just go for those on the front lines, that goes for everybody involved in war. But those things weren't part of my expectations or what I wanted out of this book. Those should have been like a bonus, but they were the entire meat of it, which sucks. Like, I wanted them to be my side salad, but instead they were the meatloaf, and it was just okay meatloaf. I wanted the meatloaf to be Freddy. Oh, that's a weird sentence. I really wanted a compelling protagonist whose grief I wanted to and was basking in. And something about Laura always made her feel at arm's reach for me. But Freddie, I really found, and again, I really wish that the book wasn't like split between them, because Freddie's chapters, I found myself longing for Freddie during Laura's chapters, especially when he ends up sort of in this purgatory-like place. I'll get into spoilers in a minute. Again, that like losing pieces of yourself theme really came out there in a way that I felt was like so potent, so strong, and really showcased like the best of what Catherine Arden can do with theme. But then that was sort of the highlight, which is wild. I also don't feel like the light magical elements here did anything that really moved me, especially when we get to the sort of like triumphant scene where, we're doing a lot of it. It was so light. I'm trying to be spoiler free. It was so light up to that point that I felt like I don't really understand what's going on here, and I also don't really care. I just wanted to hang out with Freddie and Winter. And then I felt like we really shoved a lot of plot into one scene, and I think that plot was interesting. I just wish that I had cared about it up until then. We have a side character who's sort of told to be one kind of person, sort of like a silly, sort of frivolous person, and then we learn that they're a bit more complicated than that, and they're complicated because of what war has done. Again, that theme of taking pieces away from somebody, and here's who you could have been, but here's who you are because of war. And I thought that was interesting, but it happened so quick, and I felt like I had whiplash. I had to re-listen to the scene because I'm like, oh, okay. But then we still had more book to go. So I gave this a 3 instead of a 2 because I also did like how the characters ended up. It's really hard to talk about this without spoilers, actually. So I'm just going to say it's a 3 instead of a 2. I'm going to move on to spoilers, and then I'm going to do a piece at the end here about what I don't, this is what sucks about 3-star reviews, is that I don't have a lot to say. That's another thing, is I really like making long format content. And when I read a 3-star book that was supposed to be a 5, all I really can say is it was supposed to do this and it didn't. Here's what it did. And I was just mediocre about it. Like, it was very middle of the road. It's a lot easier to make a whole thesis on what I don't like, because then I can give you examples, and I can talk about what I wish would have done better, and I can read lines, but I can't sit here and read lines to you about, Catherine Arden's writing, because there's nothing wrong on a line level. Like, how do I sit here and read you lines that would make you understand how I didn't fall in love with Laura? I hate 3-star review videos. So I'm going to explain the ending here, and then I'm going to end this by talking about books that did make me cry. All right, so the ending was really interesting. The hotelier, am I saying that right? Help. I know you guys will correct me. You always do. The hotelier is basically the devil, I think. And his name is Falond. And Falond sort of gets these people in wartime to, come into his house, and then he plays this violin, and he steals pieces of their soul, and he offers them like a way to sort of check out from life. Check out, hotel. Haha. Well, Freddie ends up there. Hans Winter, who he was stuck in the pillbox with, doesn't. And I think that if we had had any more Freddie chapters being stuck in the hotel, it would have been to excess. But the amount that we got of him being stuck in the hotel and having to tell his stories and lose pieces of himself, I thought that was like perfectly done. The problem is we always have to switch back to Laura. So Laura is working at this hospital. Hans Winter, who is a German soldier, so they're at war. Hans Winter shows up and he shoots somebody, technically, at the hospital. He shoots at a general. And you know that like something is amiss here. We'll come back to that. Laura figures out where Freddie is. He's in that hotel run by the devil who's stealing. He went down to Georgia with a fiddle, and it's not Georgia, but yeah, he's stealing pieces of their souls, and Freddie is losing like literal pieces of himself. So then by the time that Laura gets to him, he's like, I'm not Freddie anymore. I've lost so much of myself. And again, it's having that conversation about losing yourself to war. How many times have I said that now? So she fights with Fallon to get Freddie out of this hotel, and she doesn't like fully understand what's going on, but she had asked Vinter, who told Laura where her brother was, what does Fallon want with my brother? And I thought that this was really interesting. Like, I like the idea of the devil running a hotel and stealing bits of your soul through song. She says, what does Fallon want with my brother? And Vinter says, to eat, just like the war does, only he savors. Does that make him better? His world ended. That's what the ghost said. And Vinter knew that Fallon was bad news as soon as seeing him, because he said he was, surrounded by ghosts. And Laura doesn't really understand, like what happens when she gets to the hotel. Laura, she's seen signs of like supernatural stuff. It's not super dived into, but she doesn't really believe in magic. In fact, there's a quote that says, her conviction, born of long days and longer nights, was that if the world contained any magic at all, then it could not also contain their war. And that's, again, like, Catherine is a really good writer. Again, if it were just not about Laura, maybe I would have liked it more. So she does get Freddie out of the hotel prison run by the violinist devil. And then because Vinter shot at a general, he's supposed to be taken into custody, but one of her friends, who has been looking for her son, who was in the war, has been traveling with her, and she has sort of been like really nice and like very like cheery and charismatic with all of these soldiers that they've been coming into contact with. Well, she goes with them, Laura, her friend, whose name I can't even remember now, and Vinter, and they all go and they talk to this general about what they're going to do with Vinter since he shot at the general. And her friend ends up grabbing a gun, her very cheery friend, who up to this point has been like the nicest person. Laura's friend grabs a gun and is like, you're the reason that my son is dead. You could have saved his life. The last words he ever heard were basically that you were disappointed in him. This was kind of stupid, I felt like. He didn't, he abandoned his post and you guys killed him for it. And this general could have been nicer about it, but he wasn't. And the last words he ever heard, my son, were, that he was doing his duty by dying or something. And I was like, oh, that's kind of stupid. I wish that it had a little bit more potency to that. I wish that he had said something awful, or I wish that he had said nothing and just, signed the order for his execution, and she was mad about it. But like the whole, you could have been nicer, you were his last words. I was like, oh, that's kind of silly. Anyway, she shoots the general and they're like, well, now you're going to get taken into custody. And it turns out she's like, well, I shot at him in the first place. Vinter was just trying to grab the gun from me because he knew that I was going to shoot the guy. Now they're all going to be in trouble for being involved in this, right? So Fallon, the devil, shows up and he's like, we can make a deal. And he takes the lady who was looking for her son this whole time. He takes her to his hotel to, tell her stories and eventually turn into a husk, a shell, and die. Meanwhile, Laura, Freddie, and Vinter are like, we have to get out of here. So, strings are pulled and they're able to get out. And they go live out in the middle of nowhere together. But slowly, Freddie's like, I want to get out even further out into the middle of nowhere, me and Vinter. And Laura's like, I can't come with you. We were given this house by family friends. I can't just leave it. And he's like, I know. And it stings for her that, she went all this time trying to find him only for him to abandon her. By the way, Freddie and Vinter are obviously gay. So I don't know if I mentioned that, which I thought was really sweet. I was rooting for them, and I was so glad that they both made it out alive in the end. And then a doctor that Laura had, like, sort of, had some nice conversations with shows up in the end, and obviously they're gonna be together. So it was, it was a bittersweet ending, and I was happy that Hans and that Vinter and Eddie, Freddie, oh my gosh, Freddie and Vinter, they got to be together in the end, and Freddie lifelong did deal with having lost so much of himself, and he just couldn't come back from that. And that should have hit. Like, that should have been the moment where I just sobbed. And I didn't do it. I was just like, oh yeah, that's sad. It's a little sad. That should have been the moment where I was sobbing. And I didn't. And there were so many elements here, like the lagging, the not spending enough time with Freddie, the fact that Laura's parts were so lackluster, it just culminated in me being like, this was fine, like 3.25, it's fine. It's not a bad book, it's just not what I wanted from it. Let's talk about some books that did make me sob. I actually have probably some footage. Maybe I can play some for you. There's a mix of stuff in here. Some of it's contemporary, some of it's fantasy. So first we can talk about Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson, which is about a girl who notices that her best friend has not been coming to school. Her name is Monday, and she tries to figure out what happened to Monday. Why isn't Monday at school? Why is nobody looking for her? You're sort of kept in the dark, and so is the main character, but then you realize why. You realize, what's been kept from her and what happened to Monday, and it all happens in this pretty explosive, like, I don't want to call it a twist, that doesn't seem like the right word, sleight of hand? No, it's big climax where you're like, oh, and then it hits how sad that it is. This deals with child abuse, child death, institutional racism, and deeply with grief. Another one is The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Dimeline. This is set in the US and Canada. It is a dystopian where, I need to buy this for my niece. She's really into dystopians now. This is a dystopian where the main character at the beginning of the book gets separated from his brother. They are two indigenous kids, and his older brother and him get separated. Indigenous people are hunted in this world because their marrow is used, because people have lost the ability to dream, and they use the bone marrow of indigenous people in order to get back their ability to dream. I have read both books in this duology, and 5 stars all around. There's a lot of heavy moments in this where I just sat there and cried. This is a lot about found family, but we don't just like see the main character meeting these people and getting, connections with them. I really felt like I knew each side character, because there's like an old woman and there's like a middle-aged guy, and you get to know each of them so intimately and know their pain and know how they all got to, who they were before everything went to shit in this dystopian, and how they all got here and what was lost. And each moment of them, revealing who they were resonated with me. I think that the second book hit even harder because there is such deep betrayal. There's so much pain in this series. Another one that I read last year that I definitely just cried about it in a video was Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. This is a really difficult book to explain. This is sort of autobiographical, but it's Echo Brown's story of what happened to her, if what happened to her also had magical elements, where she's learning to become a wizard. But really what it is, it's not really about the magic. This is a book exploring the intersection of being a Black girl who is also dealing with poverty and sexism and mental health, and then also sexual assault, and sort of like when these things happen to her, these like very traumatic things. She's also dealing with child abuse and abandonment, and her mother also dealt with these things. When she deals with these things, there's this sort of like almost a dissociation element that happens that has to do with like how the magical realism is used. It's really difficult to explain, but there is a part where unfortunately the main character is sexually assaulted, and I sobbed at this point because it's one of those books where it felt like I was seen, because when I think back to what happened to me when I was 17, when I was assaulted, it took a long time for me to understand what was happening at that point. But there was like a moment of dissociation, and that happened in Black Girl Unlimited, and that was really powerful for me to see reflected on the page. But then also it's a story about a girl, and she's dealing with so much trauma, and you can't help but just sit there and the tears are leaking out of your eyes while you're like, how can I reach in and pull you out of this? Oh, I knew it. I knew I was going to cry talking about this. See how I'm crying just like talking about these books, but I didn't cry at all talking about The Romance of Ghosts. There's your proof. Oh, here's one. Okay. I think I can hold it together talking about this one. I didn't while I reviewed it. Spin of Fate by A.A. Vora is a fantasy book. This one really made me cry towards the end because we have our main character, Aina, and Aina has a mom who is very deeply unkind to her. And I've talked excessively about how much I love mommy issues. This is a mommy issues book, but it's not a my mom is ambitious. It's in the end, it's sort of like my mom is mean to me because my mom doesn't know how to be a mom, and being mean was her only way, like throwing me out was the only way of her being able to, like, that was her way of trying to protect me. And she's such a bad mom, but also she just didn't have the tools. But there's a lot of heartbreak along the way because Aina doesn't really see it like that. Aina thinks, well, if I just do this, my mom will love me. Oh no. It gets proved to her every time that that is just not true. It's fine. I'm fine. Oh no. Sadie by Courtney Summers. This was the worst reaction I've ever had to a book, probably, up until I read Your Blood, My Bones. Sadie by Courtney Summers is about a girl named Sadie who she has gone missing, and it's told in the form of you hear from Sadie as she's trying to find this dude who she believed killed her younger sister, which is already heartbreaking, and you hear a lot about Sadie and her younger sister. Oh no. So the other POV you get is of a podcast of a guy trying to solve Sadie's disappearance. Well, Sadie is on this journey to try to track down this guy, and she tracks him down. I can't really tell you everything that happens, but for some reason, oh my God, Rachel, for some reason, Sadie's last line of the book just absolutely broke me, and I had to go get Carlos and have him hold me while I sobbed, and then I had to put my head between my legs while I hyperventilated. Just for some reason, it just felt so unfair. It felt so unjust. I should not, why did I film this first? Oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. I have to film an entire 2-hour-long rant and I'm already crying my makeup off. It just felt so deeply unfair because for some reason you think that it will end differently, and you don't think that really it's not about it ending differently. It's not about the story. It's about memorializing these girls. It's fine. I don't know why I'm crying again. It can't hurt you. It's just a book. Oh no. Okay. Firekeeper's Daughter. This is one of my favorite books. This looks like a fantasy book. It's not. It's a contemporary book about an indigenous girl named Donis. There's a lot of elements to this. It's sort of a thriller, sort of a mystery. Somebody in Donis's community is selling drugs, and this leads to something very traumatic happening in front of Donis, and she agrees to work with the FBI to find out who is doing this drug business. There is a sexual assault in here, and I've read this twice. I forgot about it the first time, and I realized now that I think that was my brain protecting me. When this assault happens, the character dissociates. When it happened to me, I didn't know it was happening to me. So now there is catharsis in knowing that that's not abnormal, and there's not one way to react when you are assaulted, which is helpful to know because many of us think that we have to be this perfect victim and we have to do all the right things, otherwise we don't deserve to talk about it. Shit. And this book, as well as other books, are so helpful in me helping to reframe my thinking on what happened to me. But also outside of that, it's just a damn good book. There's a lot of pain because Donis lost her father. She has a shoulder in. Earlier I said shoulder when I meant to say soldier, and now it's doing the other thing. My mouth. She has a shoulder injury, so she can't play hockey, and she wants to so badly. That's, she travels around with her brother's hockey team, and there's so much sense of community here, but there's also so much grief and so much loss, but a lot of it is about the treatment of women, particularly Indigenous women. So yeah, this one is a lot of pain. It's a really good book. Also a book that Bruce in Clay County, Florida wants banned because he's a piece of shit. Your Blood, My Bones by Kelly Andrew is about a girl named Wyatt who goes to burn down her family's house, and her family ran a cult. Her family bequeathed her the house. She goes to burn it down, and she finds her old friend Peter chained up in the basement, and it turns out that the cult that her parents were running was ritualistically killing Peter over and over again, and he has to kill her or he can't leave. And then there's just a whole lot of pain. Here's me trying to talk about this book and, failing. I'm not gonna cry. She's looking at him, and it says, dully she wondered if this is what heartbreak felt like, looking into the eyes of someone she'd spent her whole life memorizing and finding nothing recognizable left over in their depths. This book just has my whole heart. I don't know. I love what it did to me. I love that it broke my heart. It killed me. And I keep spreading the word about it, and I'm serially ruining other people's lives now at this point, spreading the word of this book. My friend Margaret, I don't think will ever forgive me for having recommended it. I just got a text from my friend Jules the other day, and she was like, Rachel, why? Somebody in my book club Discord was like, I started Your Blood, My Bones, and now I'm crying in the car. So yeah, I'm sorry for traumatizing all of you, but I'm also not sorry for traumatizing all of you. It's cathartic to cry, okay? Future Home of the Living God by Louise Erdrich. And this is about, okay, so human fetuses start to go backwards in evolution and pregnant women start to get locked up. I think you should read this instead of reading The Handmaid's Tale, especially now with, reasons. I think a good book to read instead of The Handmaid's Tale is Future Home of the Living God. I mean, you can read The Handmaid's Tale. I'm not telling you not to read it. I'm just saying that I think that a better book is Future Home of the Living God because it talks about the treatment of Indigenous women. Wow, there's a lot of Indigenous books on this. I'm not even done. There's another one I have to talk about in a second. The main character in this is pregnant. This is again a dystopian, so the whole world is sort of going to shit and she ends up in hiding and she ends up locked up. So this made me cry because I had a traumatic birth experience with my second kid. He ended up in the NICU and I felt extremely depressed. It was the worst mental health period of my life when my youngest was in the NICU. He had an unknown, we still don't really fully understand what happened, but he had a medical issue. He was having seizures and a couple of other things. They never figured out why he had seizures. But after having him, I talked to my doctors and my medical team and they said, we advise you not to get pregnant again. So this book had also traumatic birth experiences and it's about also, taking away the rights of pregnant people, particularly Indigenous women, because the government thinks that they know best. So there was a lot of hiding from law enforcement and medical communities, and there's a lot of traumatic birth experiences, and this made me cry because of the experiences that I had and what the main character is going through, and I just felt like I was there with her in that hospital room where she can't leave and neither can her hospital roommate. Wow, thinking about this now, I read this before the overturn of Roe, and now thinking about it, I'm like, oh, that stings, doesn't it? All right, last one I'm going to talk about because I really have to go film something else. I can't sit here and cry all day with you, is The Berry Pickers. And this is another book by an Indigenous author where we get two POVs. There is this Indigenous family and they are picking berries in Maine and Canada. What part of Canada is that? I don't remember. I'm sorry. Well, this young Indigenous boy, part of this Indigenous family, they take a break, they eat lunch, and he's supposed to be watching his sister, and then his sister disappears. Then the next POV you get is from a girl who grows up in this family, and she always feels like she is somehow set apart from this family. And so it's about this, the grief of losing this family member, grieving somebody who is not dead, and then when you finally come back together, the grief of what was lost in all that time, what was taken from you. I'll just play a clip because every time I talk about this book, this happens. But there was so much that was lost. It's a weird experience, grieving things for fictional people, but I really grieved for this family. And for Ruthie in particular, for all that she experienced. She just deserved so much more. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Absolutely phenomenal book. I just really appreciate, again, the care that was taken in talking about losing pregnancy. When I read The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell, this was sort of traumatic for me because of a pregnancy that is lost by one character. I had panic attacks over this book because nobody warned me that was in there. In The Berry Pickers, that did not happen because I think that so much care was taken. It wasn't used as a twist. It was this really deep, emotionally, resonating moment for me. After having lost 2 pregnancies myself, I really felt that. Okay, those are some books that made me cry, as you can see. And there's some themes there about what emotionally impacts me. But I feel like Warm Hands of Ghosts should have done that and then just didn't, which is really disappointing. I wish that it had done better about that. But, maybe the next Catherine Arden book. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Down below, leave me a book that made you sob or cry a little bit. And if you made it this far in the video, you can leave a crying emoji, because we're all just sobbing, right? It's not just me. It's not just me over here alone sobbing about books, right? Right, guys? Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye. And before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Alexander, Andy, Ashley H, Astra, Call Me Kodiak, Choco's Homesick for Taiwan, DJ Rocktopus, Ellie, Emerald Dodge, Eric D, John E, K, Kaleno K, Casey M, Catherine P, Katie M, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lemon Jelly, Lek, Other Lek, Lily, Mataraptor, Max B, Megwin Rose, Mixer Boneless, Alice, Peggy Luhu, Rain, Reese, SJ, Samar, Scarlet, SMK, Steph, 3 Raccoons in a Trench Coat, Tori, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, and Zorvictia. Thank you all so much for being here in the new year and for being a friend. And I have to say a thank you to my Potato Starch Marxist patrons, and those are a third more powerful Lex, Alejandra, Alicia's last frayed nerve, Alistair, Althea, Amanda D, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ava, Beck, Blythe, Bookish by Jenna, Bookish Rabbit, Bree, Kate B, Caitlin P, Carlin, Carly, Casper, Kate W, Catherine, Kathy, Celeste, Claire Online, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Courtney, Darius, Danielle, Darren, Desiree Michelle, Dilf Enthusiast in the Silco Apologist era. You know what? Yeah, I get it. I finally watched Arcane, so I get it now. Dorian, Dorothea is not like other girls. Draco Sean, Drive By Thinker, Dirkelsberg, Ebby, Emily A, Emma, Aaron with 2 E's, Fiona, Gadarn, Halia Artisan, Hannah C, Harpy Kuro, Helen P, Hrising, JM Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jen Michelle, Genderqueer, Jenny G, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Juicy Wizard, Kai Brecker, Caitlin M, Catherine M, Katie L, Katrina, Kaylee, Kayala, Kendra, KMTB, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura is Angry, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Lindsay M, Lisa B, Lisa L, LP, Lou Siri, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Maddie, Madison, Man-Eating Plant, Megan, Malara, May, Mima Who, Morgan, Myth Lesbian, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Paige P, Paul, Penelope, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Plague Carrier, Pondemonium, Queen Cereal, Rachel B, Reba, Rebecca R, Rhea, Ronnie, Rosie Thorns, Rowan, Sakuria, Saintbringer, Sakia Lume, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shamed, Shannon, Sheen Onion, Sean, Sophie, Stardust, T Delegati, Talia, That Nerdy Mystic, That One Cute Chick, This Is Not a Trap, Tiana, Too Thick to Work Today, Trash Can Teddy, Dribble M, Dido Phoenix, Unicorn Jenny, and Writer A. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend.